Well, most gangs, they fight for territory. These guys, they run entire neighborhoods from inside a prison cell. The old Mexican Mafia didn't just survive behind bars. They built a system where orders moved from prison yards straight out to the streets. So where saying no could get you killed, probably would get you killed. Or even their own members weren't safe from the consequences.
No.
Once it started, it didn't stay contained. It spread across California, pulled in hundreds of gangs, and turned into a network that law enforcement, they've been trying to break for decades without fully shutting it down, still rolling on today.
Good luck.
This is the story of how La Eme went from a handful of inmates in 1957 to one of the most feared criminal organizations in the whole country. You don't want to go to prison in Mexico. I mean, well, especially in Mexico, but in California for sure.
Right.
Outlaws and Gunslingers. Real stories, the way they actually happened.
The old Mexican Mafia, 1957. That's when it's founded. Doesn't happen out on the streets. Happens inside prison. 13 Hispanic street gang members from different Los Angeles neighborhoods all end up locked up at the same vocational institution. They call it Deuel.
Deuel, maybe, right?
Maybe. Which at the time is California Youth Authority facility. And today is an adult state prison. This is in Tracy, California. These guys aren't from the same...
This guy.
Yeah, these guys aren't from the same crew. No, they're actually from rival neighborhoods. In 50s and 60s, those rivalries are serious. Fighting between Hispanic gangs is part of the life back then. So the idea that enemies would suddenly work together inside prison, it wasn't something anyone was ever expecting to happen.
Right. They're like, we got to keep these guys separated.
But one of the key guys, Luis Flores, they call him Hero Buff. He's coming from the Barrio Hawaiian Gardens. That gang is out of the Hawaiian Gardens in California. And somehow he managed to do what people thought could never be done. He got his enemies to put their issues aside once they're inside. I mean, come on. You got to.
Aside once inside. That was your slogan.
Right.
Slogan?
Right. That becomes a rule that sticks all the way to present day, baby. Once you're in, whatever problems you had on the street, that don't matter here, boys.
You save them for the street.
Now the group itself is formed with very specific idea in mind. And at the time, the Italian Mafia is seen as the most powerful force in the prison system. So these guys... they decide that they're going to build their own version of that. Something organized, structured, feared. Early on, Flores is very intentional about who he brings in. He's not looking for just anyone. He's recruiting violent individuals, people who can help build a reputation and build it fast. The goal, you ask? Easy. Create an organization that can take control of the black market inside Deuel. Everything from contraband to influence over to other inmates.
Well, according to Ramon Amundo Mendoza, who comes a member of La Eme down the road, he says the early mindset's pretty straightforward. They want to terrorize the prison system and make their time inside as comfortable as possible while doing it. Power equals comfort and fear. And that's how you get the power. The name at first is meant to mirror the American Mafia, to show that some level of organization and strength, to show the same level of organization and strength. They eventually shift away from that, so there's no confusion between the two groups, and the Mafia was probably like, I don't fucking think so, dude.
Right.
Even the symbol they used, the black hand, as you see on our, if you're watching on YouTube, you can see the logo there. Has its own meaning. I hope we don't get, if they're not offended for us using their logo. Okay.
Right.
That's a reference to the black hand, the black handers from the early 20th century Mafia, which ties their identity to an earlier tradition of organized intimidation and control, you know. So right from the beginning, this isn't just another prison gang. It's built to be organized, disciplined, and above all, feared. By 1961, things inside the Deuel Vocational Institution, they're getting out of control. The violence tied to La Eme, it's so bad that prison administrators figured the best move is to break it up. So they take a number of the original members, ship them out to San Quentin Penitentiary.
That's probably the most stupidest thing to do, because now they're just going to expand.
Well, they think maybe a change of environment will cool some things down. And guess what? Don't. One of the guys sent over is Cheyenne Cadena. When he hits the lower yard at San Quentin, he's approached by a massive black inmate, about 6'5", 300 pounds. He walks up and kisses him.
Oh, no.
It's meant as intimidation, a show of dominance.
Yeah.
Cadena, he doesn't react right there, but just a short while later, he comes back, walks straight up to the same guy while he's not expecting it, and stabs him with a shiv.
Oh.
Here's the part that really tells you what kind of environment it is. There's over 1,000 inmates on that yard, and not one single person steps forward as a witness.
No, of course not.
After that, doesn't slow down either. If anything, it escalates. The IMA members, they start carrying out more killings, one after another. They're trying to build a reputation inside San Quentin now. The message is simple. Fear us or get shivved like this dude.
Wow, but that approach starts to wear thin. with other Mexican American inmates. These guys, they're getting tired of the constant violence, the stabbings, the theft, watches, rings, cigarettes, anything of value taken. So, behind the scenes, a group of them quietly forms their own gang. They call it Nuestra Familia, which means our family.
Our family. Isn't it a line at grocery stores?
Yes. This starts taking shape in the mid-'60s at the California Correctional Training Facility in Soledad. And at first, some of the early members come from L.A., but quickly shifts. Most of the recruits start coming from rural northern Cali.
Oh.
And La Eme, they don't like that. And they're not even taking them serious. They're like, these guys. They look at them as inferior. They call them farmeros, basically saying that just a bunch of farmers.
Just a bunch of farm boys.
But guess what? This attitude doesn't last long at all, because in 1968, back at San Quentin, everything boils over. Mexican Mafia soldado steals a pair of shoes from someone connected to Nuestra Familia, and that sets off a full-scale riot. What follows? Brutal. 19 inmates stabbed. One of La Eme associate dead. The whole thing becomes known as the Shoe War, and it marks a turning point. And from that moment on, Nuestra Familia isn't just some upstart group anymore. No, they are now the main rival to La Eme. Good for you guys. Through all this, Mexican Mafia keeps expanding. Inside the prison system, they tighten their grip on the illegal activity using violence. And it doesn't stay behind bars. As members get released, they carry that influence right onto the streets, especially in SoCal. This is where they start controlling narcotics distribution by taxing drug dealers, taxing a cut. They take a cut in exchange for protection and control. Oh, they know Italian stuff, huh?
Well, as we said, La Eme, they run things with a pretty tight structure. Most of that control actually comes from inside the prison system. The guys at the top aren't out on the streets. They're behind the bars. But they're still calling the shots for both the inmates and operations on the outside. At the very top, it's what they call the Clica. This isn't one single boss running everything. It's more like a small council made up of validated or made members, you could say. These are the full members, the ones who've proven themselves.
Nice.
They handle the big decisions, things like what criminal activities are approved, who gets brought in, and how rules are enforced.
Oh, we know how.
By not having one single leader, they spread the power out, which actually helps them survive. One guy gets locked down or taken out through something like a RICO case, the whole organization doesn't fall apart.
No.
Under that, you got shot callers. These are usually full La Eme members or trusted associates who are put in charge of specific areas, whether that's a prison yard, a county, or even street gangs tied in the Sureño network. Their job is to pass along orders from the Clica, and make sure they get carried out. They're the ones handling things like taxing the drug dealers, running extortion, and deciding when violence gets the green light.
Nice.
Communication is always a challenge inside prison, but they work around it. They use smuggled cell phones, and by 2011, over 15,000 of those had been seized in California prisons.
Damn.
Or they just pass handwritten notes called kites between inmates.
Makes sense.
Coded, usually.
Yeah, well, they got to make fun of the Jews like that.
Right.
Below the shot collars.
YouTube, it was KITES, okay,
Right.
Guys? Don't shut us down, buds.
Right. Below the shot collars are the associates and the Cameron, which they're recruits who aren't yet initiated. These guys handle the day-to-day work. They collect money, provide security, do whatever needs to be done. They move. Moving up isn't automatic. You got to prove loyalty, usually through criminal acts, obviously, and by following the group's 13 rules. You guys remember these rules?
Some do.
When it comes to leadership, it's not about titles as much as rep. Respect is earned through being ruthless when needed and building the right alliances. But guess what? That also means things can turn on you quickly. The group has had eternal power struggles. This is back in the 70s especially. This is where violence inside the organization helped consolidate power under figures like Joe Pegleg Morgan, before things eventually shifted into more of a shared leadership setup, as we said earlier.
Joe Pegleg Morgan, for all those that have seen Blood In, or actually
American Me, I think.
Blood In, Blood Out, is the one guy that lost his leg, the white guy. Based off of him.
Lost his arm.
Lost his leg. Remember, he had a fake leg.
American Me lost his leg, too.
Right. They're both based off the same, but Blood In, Blood Out's more of a dramatization, but
right.
The American Me is supposedly based on everything real.
All right. Power changes.
We'll get to that later.
Right. Power changes hands either through agreement within the Clica or by removing someone who's seen as a problem. And that outside pressure, that plays a role. Law enforcement crackdowns can shake things up. This happens in 2011 to 2013 Operation Crimson Tide, which targeted norteño radicals and caused temporary shifts in power. And at this very time, that's even led to temporary partnerships with outside groups, including the Mexican cartels, like La Familia Michoacana, mainly for protection and shared profits.
Yep.
Yeah, but once you get in with those whole cartels, good luck.
Well, even with so many leaders locked up, the structure still holds together, whether they're a prison gang. Some ways being inside prison makes communication harder, but it also forces them to rely on a tight, trusted network, which is a big reason the organization has been able to keep going despite constant pressure. Back in the early 60s at San Quentin, old Luis Flores and Rudy Cadena, they make a move that locks the Mexican Mafia into what it becomes going forward.
Okay.
Before this, guys could be a part of La Eme while they were inside, then go right back to their old street gangs once they got out.
Nice.
That changes here. Flores and Cadena, they put in a blood oath that makes membership permanent.
Okay.
From that point on, the only way out is death. There's no walking away from it. That idea becomes the foundation of what people later call blood in, blood out.
Damn right.
You have to spill blood to get in, and if you ever try to leave, you're going to spill your own blood.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it. Along with that, they lay down a set of commandments meant to keep the group tight and disciplined. To even get in, a new member has to be sponsored by someone already in.
Right.
And at the time, every single member has to agree to it.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a majority vote. It's unanimous, sort of like motorcycle gangs.
Right.
Biker clubs, sorry.
Right.
The rule eventually changes, but of course it does. Early on, that's how strict it is. Once you're in, the gang comes before everything, even your own family. You deny the existence of La Eme to law enforcement or anyone outside the group. You respect other members. Whatever issues you had on the street before prison, they're supposed to be left behind.
Damn right.
There's also a heavy responsibility tied to bringing someone in. Because guess what? If a member breaks the rules and you're sponsoring them, they have to be executed. You're the person who has to carry it out.
Oh, I like it.
So when you vouch for someone, you're taking that risk on yourself.
Right.
Well, at least they didn't say you're going to get killed too.
Like the Italian Mafia.
Then you get into the rules themselves, which are enforced across the board. First, a member may not be an informant. A member may not be a coward. The rules of conduct. A member may not raise a hand against another member without approval from the higher-ups and leaders. A member must not show disrespect for any member's family, including sex with another member's wife or girlfriend.
That's like the main thing they wanted to do with that.
A member must not steal from another member.
No.
A member may not be a homosexual, a sex offender, a child killer, a child molester, or even a rapist.
Look at these guys. The Italians didn't care.
I don't think you're allowed to be gay in the Italian Mafia.
Not gay. I'm sure
Probably not any of these.
Sure, you can be a sex offender and a rapist.
I don't think so.
I don't know about
maybe a
child
rapist,
molester,
but
right.
nothing involving children. I would
No.
assume.
Maybe.
A member must not politic against another member or cause dissension within the organization.
Yeah,
Good luck with that.
Right. See what happened with the bananos.
Membership's for life. The only way out is
Clubos.
death. Retaliation must be carried out if anyone crosses La Eme. No exceptions.
Oh.
Vendetta must be carried out, even if it takes months, years, or even decades.
Dang.
If a member of La Eme gets harmed or killed by someone else, such as the Popo or another criminal, gangs, retaliation must be immediate and must be swift, brutal, and deadly.
Man, it is like we don't even care if they're popos. You killed them, sons of bitches.
It is mandatory to assault or kill all dropouts and traitors.
Mhm.
La Eme comes first, even before your own family, religion, and God.
See, they say that you don't have to kill them. You can just beat the shit out of them.
I'm sure you probably should kill them.
Right.
Member must not interfere with another member's business activities. No
Nope.
stepping on toes.
Mm-mm. Take
A member
food off their
must never
plates.
harm children. See? That kind of goes hand in hand with
Right.
others. But a member must always treat another member's family with respect and kindness.
Always.
A member must protect another member from harm.
Mm.
And a member must treat another member like a brother.
Damn right. I mean, if you don't, then there's no sense of any of this.
Right.
Wow. Well, let's take a look back and see what we just did there. Flores and Cadena, they put in place isn't just a loose set of guidelines. It's a system. Loyalty is everything. Discipline enforced. And once you're in, no turning back, baby.
That's it.
You're like Lot and his wife. But she turned back and you see what happened to her.
Except for these guys ain't turning into pillars of salt. They're turning into pools of blood.
Right. La Eme uses a set of symbols and identifiers that make it pretty clear who's tied to them, both inside and out of prison. One of the most common, number 13. That comes from the 13th letter of the alphabet, the letter M, which stands for Mafia. You'll see that number show up all over the place. Tattoos, graffiti, anything connected to La Eme or the Sureño gangs that fall under their influence. That must be M13 then, huh?
Well, kind of. They actually, we'll see, they get into little spats with each other here.
Another big one is just the very word anime itself. It's the Spanish way of saying the letter M. So this directly represents the organization.
Yeah.
Well, then you got the black hand, or a mano negra. That's usually shown as a dark hand, either stretched out or clenched into a fist. And it's meant to represent what they call the black hand of death. It's there to send a message. It's there to send fear. It's there to have control. It's there for their authority. The symbol actually ties back to older organized crime, where intimidation was part of the identity. You also see things like Sur, which S-U-R, which just means south in Spanish. Okay. And that connects street level gangs to La Eme's control over Southern Cali. And then there's some less obvious ones, like Mickey Mouse imagery. That's used because MM stands for Mexican Mafia. So it's another way members signal their stand. Oh,
that's kind of a little sassy of those boys. They have some Mickey Mouse tattoos.
Mickey Mouse tattoos. Wow.
A lot of this shows up in tattoos, like we said, and those tattoos aren't something you can just hide or take lightly. They're permanent, obviously. They're meant to be. They basically mark you for life. Inside prison, it's not just about who you have tattooed, though, or what you have tattooed. It's also about how you act. If you're following La Eme's rules, things like taxing drug sales or enforcing discipline, it's how your status gets confirmed. Law enforcement, they pay close attention to all this.
Right.
Tattoo, symbols, behavior, all of it gets used to figure out who's connected. The tattoos alone don't always tell the full story, so they usually look for supporting evidence tied to actual gang activity.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to recruitment, most of it happens inside the prison system. They're usually targeting Hispanic inmates of Mexican-American background, especially guys from Southern California. Compared to some other prison gangs like the Texas Syndicate, the process can be a little more flexible. If you got the right connection, like a childhood friend who's already in, that can open the door clearly.
All right.
That approach gets them, lets them grow pretty quickly. So they're building off existing relationships, family ties, neighborhood connections, things like that.
Right.
But getting in still comes down to loyalty, though. You got to prove it, usually through actions that benefit the gang. Whether that's violence against rivals or enforcing their rules, it all ties back to the same idea.
Show does.
Blood in, blood out.
Damn right, baby.
And for guys coming in from the Sureño street gangs, prison's often the turning point. If they got someone to sponsor them, they can move from being an affiliate on the street to a full La Eme member once they're inside, which is how the organization keeps its reach going well beyond the prison walls. Once you get in with La Eme, you're the fucking kings on the streets, huh?
Damn right.
The Sureño network's really where the Mexican Mafia's power shows up on the streets. Inside prison, they call the shots, but outside, it's the Sureños carrying orders out.
Right.
And we're not talking about one or two gangs. This is hundreds of Hispanic street gangs, mostly out of Southern California, and they all tie back to La Eme in one way or another, all kicking it up.
Damn right. Wow, this setup really takes shape in the 70s. When things inside Cali prisons, they split along regional lines. You got Northern California inmates aligning with Nuestra Familia, becoming Nortinos, and Southern California inmates lining up with La Eme, becoming Sureños. That's where the identity comes from, and that's why Sureños uses the number 13, and it ties all the way back to the letter M. And you guessed it. That's for Mamma Mia.
M is for Mafia.
On the street, these gangs, well, they aren't just doing their own thing. They're expected to pay tribute right back to La Eme. Usually about 30% of whatever they're making.
That's fucked.
Through either drugs or rackets or whatever they're doing. In return, they get backing and they get protection. But it comes with the rules that we just said. If a gang or an individual steps out of line, La Eme can issue what's called a green light, which basically means you got to hit on your ass.
They're like, Hector,
you're open.
Put on the green light.
That's how control is kept across of what's estimated to be 50,000 members spread out all through the 500 different cliques across all of Cali.
That's crazy.
Some of the bigger names tied into this are the 18th Street Gang, the Florencia 13 Gang, and the 38th Street Gang. Each one operates in its own area and handles its own day-to-day business. Makes sense whether they're 18th Street Gang. But when it comes to bigger decisions, they answer to the higher-ups, La Eme shot callers. That's how things like drug distribution, extortion, and enforcement all stay connected back to the prison system. If you don't think they know, they know. If they haven't disciplined you yet or anything, they know.
See, it's not always perfectly controlled, though. Take the 18th Street Gang, for example. Starts out under La Eme influence in Los Angeles, but once parts of the gang get deported to Central America, some of those groups, they start operating more independently. They don't always follow what La Eme says the same way.
Why are they going to Central America?
Well, they got deported back there, so take a guess.
Yeah, but they're Mexican.
Well, clearly not.
It's the Mexican Mafia.
Okay.
It's not the Nicaraguan Mafia.
They said they recruit Hispanic.
Latino.
Hispanic males from Southern California.
Oh, from Southern California, so they could be from anywhere.
Right.
I get it.
Beyond the Sureños, La Eme also builds relationships with other groups when it benefits them. One of the more well ones, their connection is with MS-13. Their use of the number 13 is partly a sign of respect towards the Mexican Mafia, and that connection has allowed them to coordinate drug operations in Cali and beyond. They've also worked directly with Mexican cartels. 2011, there was an agreement known as the Project with La Familia Michoacana. Michoacana. It's pronounced weird. Right. You guys know what I'm talking about? Under that deal, La Eme provides protection inside prison and helps secure trafficking routes.
Right.
In return, they get paid, including an upfront payment of $500,000.
Damn.
Plus a share of profits from meth and marijuana.
Of course.
Moving through Sureño networks in Southern California.
They don't even have to sell marijuana because it's not even profit. Only back then it was.
Oh, right. They've also had ties to the Sinaloa cartel, helping move heroin, cocaine, and meth across the Southwest, using those same street-level connections. And people are like, oh, we got to take out the cartels. No, it's these fucking pricks in the United States doing it.
Right, dumbasses.
Even inside prison, they'll sometimes make temporary alliances, like with the old Aryan Brotherhood. If there's a bigger threat they both want to deal with. But those deals are always situational and can change quickly.
Yeah, you don't want to mess with the Aryans. If you're helping them fight blacks, they're your best buds, but they will stab you in your back in 2.5.
I think that goes for every gang.
Right. At the end of the day, what La Eme is really doing is acting like a middleman. They're less focused on ideology and more focused on control and money. The Sureño network is what makes that possible. Turning prison authority into real influence on the streets and even across borders. Mexican Mafia also has a loose alliance with the Aryan Brotherhood, as we just said, and it's not because they share the same background or ideology. Of course not. It comes down practicality. Inside the prison, both groups have common enemies. So, at times, it makes sense for them to work together. These alliances aren't permanent or even based on loyalty. They're more like temporary understandings. If teaming up helps them deal with a bigger threat, and then that situation changes, so does the alliance.
Yep. As we said, the Mexican Mafia's main rival is Nuestra Familia. That feud goes all the way back to the mid-'60s. First, it's more of a split, but it doesn't stay that way for long. By the late 60s, things turn violent. Nuestra Familia breaks away from the Mexican Mafia control. That kicks off a power struggle inside the prisons over who's running things, especially when it comes to drug trafficking and other rackets. That's where the so-called blood war really begins, and it costs a lot of lives. By the 70s, the lines are fully drawn. Becomes a regional divide. Southern California inmates align with La Eme and became known as the Sureños, like we said. While the northern guys, they align with Nuestra Familia and become the Norteños. From that point on, both sides are running their own networks, and they're directly opposed to each other. They don't stay inside prison walls either. That rivalry spills out into the streets and turns into the Sureños versus the Norteños conflict.
Uh-oh.
You got thousands of Sureño gang members tied back to the Mexican Mafia. They're expected to enforce orders, which includes kill-on-sight directives against Norteños.
Damn right.
That leads to ongoing violence, shooting, stabbing, assaults, constant territorial fights in areas where those groups overlap, and there's many.
Damn, over the following years, there's been hundreds of casualties tied to this very feud, both inside and out. Exact numbers are hard to pin because a lot of it goes unreported. And witnesses, good luck. But the impact is very clear. This isn't something that burned out over time. Even in the 2020s, the conflict is still here, baby. It's driven by the same things started over. Control of drug distribution, money from extortion, and influence. There have been moments where things, they calm down a bit, whether it's because of temporary truces or just because the old law enforcement was stepping in. But those don't last. the rivalry always finds its way back. And it stays one of the defining conflicts tied to both groups. Beyond Nuestra Familia, the Mexican Mafia also issues with other major Christian gangs.
They have issues with them, yes.
Beyond Nuestra Familia, the Mexican Mafia also has other issues with other gangs, especially the Aryan Brotherhood.
Yes.
And the Black Guerrilla family.
Uh-huh.
Those guys. A lot of that, they got a story. How come we never done those? Did we?
No.
A lot of it comes down to race. Most of it comes down to race and a little bit about control. Inside California prisons, where different groups are competing for the same limited resources and influence, those tensions don't take much to turn violent. There are moments where these groups will work together against a bigger threat. That's never the default.
It's usually against one of the other two.
Right. Most of the time, it's back to hostility. And that's shown through assaults, stabbings, and targeted killings between factions. Well, at the very same time, not all the friction comes from outside groups. La Eme's own system creates problems as well. They enforce taxation on Hispanic inmates and street gangs, expecting a cut from everything they get. When some of those bodies refuses to pay or tries to operate independently, guess what? Eternal conflict.
Eternal and
right.
internal conflict.
Internal conflict. Smaller or unaffiliated gangs that don't want to fall in line end up clashing with La Eme.
But even with all those secondary conflicts we mentioned, the biggest and most dangerous, it's still with Nuestra Familia. That's the one that never really cools off. It's not just random violence either. It's organized, it's calculated, and it's carried out like ongoing retaliation. Both sides, they operate under strict rules that demand payback. So once something happens, it keeps cycling. You kill me, I'm killing you. You kill me, I kill you.
Right.
That's why law enforcement often describes it as a constant ongoing war rather than a series of isolated incidents.
I get it.
According to the FBI, the Buru, the Mexican Mafia has even gone as far as arranging contract killings through the old Aryan Brotherhood. They have no problem with that.
Right.
Sounds strange at first. Yes, we know. Both groups, they're opposed to the Norteños, the Northerners,
right,
as well as African-American prison gangs like the Black Guerrilla family and the DC Blacks. So at times, they'll work together when it serves a purpose. There are also contradictions inside La Eme itself.
Isn't there always?
Remember what we said earlier with the rules. Homosexuals aren't allowed to be in the group.
Nope.
But at the same time, the group is heavily involved in homosexual prostitution within the prison system.
Obviously.
Hey, man. It's one of those things where
they
the
say
rules.
Right. When you're in prison, there's no such thing as homosexual.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't know. I think only homosexual prisoners say that.
I'm not gay.
Right. I was just prison,
I was
man.
in prison, man. It's allowed.
It's one of those things where the unwritten rules, they don't always line up with what actually happens. I mean, you want to get money, I guess.
Well, when you're out on the streets, their influence shows up in very real ways. Highland Park area of L.A., a lot of homicides tied to the Avenues gang. They were carried out under orders coming directly from the old Mexican Mafia. This is how far their reach extends, even from behind bars, as we all know. As for how they make money, well, it's easy. Mix of activities, both in and out of prison. But the biggest source, extortion, tied to drugs. On the outside, they're taxing dealers, taking percentage of profits in exchange for operating under their control. Inside, they're involved in distributing narcotics as well, keeping that system going within prison walls. One moment that really shows their level of control, 1992, this happens. Joe Pegleg Morgan, one of the most influential leaders ever in La Eme. He issues an order that all drive-by shootings and random street violence by Serranos are to stop.
Done.
And guess what? It works. From April, when the order goes out, through September of that same very year, no drive-by shootings in East LA. Which, from Mexicans.
Maybe.
Right. Which at the time is known for exactly that kind of violence.
It is East LA. I don't think there's even a big black population there.
Right. It's a rare example of a gang using its influence to shut violence down instead of escalating it. And it shows just how much control La Eme had over its networks on the very streets of LA. Over the years, La Eme hasn't just been about structure or influence. No, it's been tied directly to some of the most violence that you can even think about. Let's take a look at a few of those. 1957, Gregory Herrera Venezuela and Agustin Acosta, both Mexican Mafia associates and members of the White Fence Gang.
Oh.
They carry out a robbery in East LA that ends with them shooting and killing a grocer named Jose Castellanos. The case goes to trial, but even that doesn't slow things down. May 13th, 1958, while they're in the Hall of Justice standing trial for Castellanos' murder, Venezuelan Acosta attacked L.A. County Sheriff's Department Sergeant Ned Blavetrovich. He had to testify against him.
Well, duh. He's a cop.
Right. And they go after him using sharpened spoons. They did happen to manage to stab him right there in the courtroom.
Oh, geez.
Pretty sure there's a video on that. And
no, not 1957.
Oh, no. Yeah, right.
Both men, though, they're eventually convicted of first-degree murder for killing Castellanos and are sentenced to life in state prison.
Gotta go.
On top of that, they plead guilty to assault with intent to commit murder and cause an injury to a county employee for the attack of the sheriff's guy. With those sentences running alongside their life, whatever. Around the same time, La Eme is already showing what it's capable of inside the prisons. June of 58, San Quentin. Dorito, right? Dorotio. Betancourt, they call him Sleepy, and Frank Bazour, they call him Moose. They carry out the first known murder of a prison guard tied to the Mexican Mafia.
Oh, shit.
Not long after that, La Eme starts extending that same level of control beyond prison walls. And by early 70s, 71 to be precise, leads what's considered the first murder ordered by the Mexican Mafia on the outside.
Uh-oh.
That victim, unfortunately for him, Alfonso Alvarez, they call him Pachi. He's found in a secluded area of Monterey Park, shot twice in the head.
Damn.
The reason behind it comes down to money. Alvarez had been collecting taxes from narcotics dealers, but instead of sending his cut back to the La Eme leadership, the big homies, they call them, he keeps it for himself. That's something you don't do. And the response is immediate, like it says in the rules.
Damn right.
The person who carries out the hit is old Joe Pegleg Morgan himself.
No shit.
By that point, though, Morgan has already risen to become one of the most powerful figures in the Mafia.
Yeah.
Mexican Mafia, why is he doing it?
Right.
Even though he doesn't have Mexican heritage, which makes his position even more unusual.
Yeah.
You guys have seen the movie.
Yeah.
He builds that influence largely through his connections, especially with cocaine and heroin supplier in Mexico. And helps lay his groundwork for La Eme's drug distribution network across California.
Look at this guy. Well, they do need a white guy to...
Why? They're dealing with other...
dealing with
cartels.
Yeah, that's rough, dude. I can't believe they're...
Yeah, but were the cartels that crazy like in the back then that they are now?
We don't know. Through the 70s, while the organization is under the influence of Morgan's protege, Rodolfo Cadena, La Eme starts pushing into areas beyond just drugs and prison control.
Oh, jeez.
Guess what they start doing? They begin taking advantage of community programs.
Yeah.
Including ones meant to prevent alcohol and drug abuse. Instead of helping people, those programs end up being used as a way to funnel money back into the criminal activity. And also probably get these guys back on drugs.
Right. Can't lose your customers.
Right. One of the clearest examples of that involves a program called Get Going. It's funded by taxpayers as a drug treatment initiative. The Mexican Mafia teams up with the Italian-American LA crime family to skim money from it. But the scheme, it doesn't stay hidden forever. Because by 1977, the program's founder, Ellen Delia, starts to realize, oh, shit, look at these guys. They're infiltrating my business. She becomes determined to expose these guys. She gathers all...
Stay away, Ellen.
Right. She gathers all the evidence that she needs, tying both the Italian and the Mexican Mafia to the corruption inside her very own program that she built from the ground up. She said, I don't think so. But before she can even bring it forward to the Popo or even to the media, just before a scheduled meeting with the California State Secretary of Health and Welfare Services, guess what? Murdered. Evidence she had collected, never found. 1984, another case that showed just how quickly things can escalate when a La Eme is involved. Because on the 14th of October, Alfred Arthur Sandoval, they call him Chato. He's a high-ranking Mexican Mafia member. He's tied to the Arizona Maravilla gang. He opens fire during a gang fight at the Belvedere Park in East LA. Two men, Gilbert Martinez, Anthony Aceves, both from the Mariana Maravilla gang, murdered.
Dead.
There's a third man, Manuel Torres. He's hit. He survives. All this alone would not have been enough to draw attention. But
it would have been.
All this alone is enough to draw attention. It doesn't stop, though. Just about 2 weeks later, Halloween 1984, Sandoval carries out another murder, this time inside a home in Baldwin Park. Ray Wells. He is shot execution style. This is because Sandoval believes that he tipped off the Popo about the car used in the Belvedere Park murders. And then Marlene Wells killed as well. Simply, she witnessed it.
She was there. Well, Sandoval, he's eventually brought to trial in L.A. County Superior Court. He's then convicted 4 counts of first-degree murder.
Damn.
For the killing of Marlene Wells, he's sentenced to death.
Whoa.
For the murders. Well, yeah, because she was an innocent victim, basically.
Right.
These guys are actually criminals that he's killing. For the murders of the other 3, he receives life without parole. That doesn't matter.
Right.
Well, he's probably still on death row for all we know.
That's true.
Well, years later, though, November 6, 2000, Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturns his death sentence for Marlene Wells' murder.
Cool. So 30 years later, or 20 years later.
Don't change the outcome, though, for
16
him.
years later.
He's still in prison for life, obviously. Why'd they overturn it? It's stupid.
Right.
Not long after that, though, in 1980, because I think did California get rid of the death penalty?
Yeah.
Or they brought it back, or they just did something with it?
One of them.
Not long after that, though, in 85, there's another case that shows just how the mafia of the Mexicans enforced control when money was involved.
Okay.
April 26th that year, 2 Mexican Mafia members, brothers Hector and Ronaldo Ayala, along with a third man, Joseph Moreno, they confront a group of men at the A&Z Auto Repair Shop in the Logan Heights neighborhood in southeast San Diego. Their targets are Ernesto Chacho Dominguez, Marco Zamora Villa, and Jose Luis Rositas, they call him Cucuy. They're all believed to be involved in the heroin trade.
Oh, of course they are.
The confrontation, you guessed it, over money.
Mm-hmm.
The Ayalas demanded $10,000. When that doesn't go their way, it turns into an execution. The 3 men bound and then shot to death. A 4th victim, Pedro Castillo, he's shot but survives. He later identifies the Ayala brothers as the ones responsible.
You bastard.
That case goes to trial October 12th, 1988. Ronaldo, he's convicted of 3 counts of first-degree murder, along with attempted murder, robbery, and attempted robbery. He's then sentenced to death in the gas chamber at San Quentin prison on February 9th, 1989.
Oh.
Hector, he's tried separately and ends up with the same outcome. August 1st, 1989, he's convicted on the same charges, later sentenced to death November 17th, 1989.
Sentence, but did it ever happen?
As for the third man, Joseph Moreno, he's acquitted of all charges.
It's because he's part of the Italian Mafia and actually has some pull.
Maybe.
By the 90s, a lot of violence tied to La Eme isn't just aimed at rivals anymore. Nope. Turning inward like it always does.
Oh, inevitably.
16th of July, 1991, inside the L.A. County Jail, Mexican Mafia members Benjamin Peters and Rene Enriquez, Topo and Boxer, they go after one of their own, Salvatore Buenrostro. They call him Man. He's accused of siding.
Are you dead, man?
Right. He's accused of siding against Peg Leg Morgan. Ooh. And that's enough to put a target on him. 26 times they stabbed this guy.
Jeez.
But guess what?
Wow.
He lives. That very same year, another member, Charlie Brown Manriquez, ends up in the crosshairs for a different reason. He's labeled as a coward after failing to carry out a planned stabbing on another inmate at the Chino State Prison.
Oh, you little pussy, they said. Huh?
Right. In the Mexican Mafia.
They said it. I didn't say it.
Right. In the Mexican Mafia, this kind of behavior isn't overlooked. It's one of the rules. 25th of March, 1992. He is tracked down in Ramona. Right. He's tracked down in the Ramona Gardens housing project in the Boyle Heights. And guess what? Shot to death by hitman David Gallardo. They call him Smilin'.
Smilone.
Then, 1998, law enforcement finally starts making a serious pushback.
It took long enough, guys.
Federal,
they were
right.
a little preoccupied, probably with the biker gangs and all that shit that were running amok.
Right. Federal authorities indict 22 members and associates of the Mexican Mafia.
Not that many.
Under the RICO Act. Charges cover everything from extortion to murder to kidnapping. It's a result
from extortion to kidnapping to murder.
Right. It's a result of a 2-year investigation involving federal, state, and local agencies, and they're all working together.
Oh, that's a big, what's the word I'm looking for? It's a big achievement for them.
Right. Among those arrested, you guessed it, Benjamin Topo Peters, who at this time is believed to be the highest ranking member of La Eme.
What happened to Peg Leg?
Well, he's also in the middle of a power struggle with another member, Ruben Hernandez. They call him Tupi.
Oh, you got Tupi and Topo.
He's from the Ontario Valley, sir, in Ontario, California. Another person indicted in the case is accused of plotting the murder of an anti-gang activist who had been worked as a consultant on the film American Me.
Yeah, we'll get to that later.
Wow.
This one's one of the biggest coordinated efforts to hit the La Eme leadership, and it shows just how much attention the organization had drawn at that point from law. By the early 2000s, you're still seeing just how unpredictable things can be around La Eme, even for people at the top.
Right.
March 5th, 2001. Just a couple years before that fateful day everybody remembers. Mike Ison, they call him Acha, a longtime Mexican Mafia leader. He ends up dead after what starts as a bar fight. Ison had a reputation for surviving more than 30 years inside some of California's toughest prisons. But that don't save him here. At Grady's bar in the Mission District of San Fran, things get a little out of hand. He's beaten to death by 3 or 4 people using pool cues. Oh, no. And a couple years later, December 2003, there's another case tied back to the organization, this time all the way in Colorado. A 34-year-old man named Daniel Larson, who owns D&D Auto Recycling in Fort Collins, he disappears. The day before he goes missing, he tells his ex-wife that he has to meet with members of the Mexican Mafia over an unpaid debt. December 28th, Larson's gray 1990 Pontiac 6000 is found at a park and ride. Clear signs of foul play, including blood in the trunk. A few weeks later, January 13th, 2004, hunters, they discover his body in a field north of Kersey near Weld County, roads 38859.
Isn't blood in the trunk like a drink?
Could be a song.
Right.
Even years after its formation, cases like these show that La Eme's influence isn't limited to one place, and it doesn't stay confined to prison walls, clearly.
Right.
By 2006, law enforcement still trying to get a handle on just how far the Mexican Mafia's reach actually does go. And that year brings another major case, wouldn't you know?
What would it bring? 36 count federal indictment handed down against members of the Mexican Mafia, covering a range of crimes, violence, drug dealings, extortion, especially targeting smaller Latino street gangs. What stands out in this case? How clearly it shows the way that La Eme operates. According to federal investigators, their influence stretches way across both federal and state prison systems. And it's all enforced the exact same way. Violence and the threat of violence.
Or at least the threat of it, right?
This control doesn't fade once members are locked up. A lot of cases get stronger. Members and associates stay loyal to the organization, whether they're inside or out, especially in places like LA and San Diego. And the Mexican Mafia makes it very clear. Loyalty isn't optional.
Nope.
Street gangs across Southern Cal know that if they end up in prison, they're expected to fall in line. And if they don't, they won't be getting out. A big part of that control comes from taxation.
Without representation.
Definitely. Drug dealers and gangs are expected to pay a cut, basically protection money. This is just so they can operate under La Eme. If they refuse, threaten to kill, or they're killed. And this system is one of the main ways the organization keeps power over such a large network. Here's what really surprises people. It's how much of this is still being directed from inside. High-ranking members can be locked down in cells for 23 hours a day and still stay in control. They find ways to communicate. Well, they've already got like 30 of the correction officers on their side. Whether it's tapping coded messages through plumbing pipes or sending out smuggled letters or just telling the guys what to do. At the core of it all, simple goal. Mexican Mafia, they're not trying to exist alongside other groups. No, they're trying to control all of the drug trafficking in every area where they have presence. And everything they do is built around that very idea.
And by early 2012, another major case out of San Diego County gives a pretty clear picture of just how organized and far-reaching they are.
All right.
Federal authorities, they indict 119 gang members this time, which includes a Mexican Mafia boss who's arrested during a raid at his house in San Marcos. What they uncover isn't just a loose group of gangs. It's a structured network running drug operations across North County and even inside the Vista Detention Center.
Okay. Wow.
At the center of it is Rudy Espudo. They call him Crazy Rudy.
Rudy Poo.
Rudy Espu. He's from Escovadio Diablos out of Escondido.
Oh.
He's controlling Hispanic gangs in the area and making sure drug dealers, they're paying taxes back to the old La Eme.
Damn right.
If they don't, you know, there's consequences, and everybody else knows it too.
Of course.
The operation isn't limited to the streets either. Local gangs are smuggling narcotics into the Vista jail, where they're being sold on behalf of the mafia.
Okay.
At the same time, out on the streets, the Sureños, they're being ordered to collect taxes from drug dealers, keeping that same system running on both sides of the bars.
All right.
Around that same period, 2011, well, it's a year earlier, members of the Azusa 13 gang, which is tied to La Eme, they're indicted for harassing and intimidating black residents in Southern California.
Right.
And it's just another layer to the kind of activity connected right back to the organization. Taken together, cases like this, they show even decades after its start, La Eme, it's still operating as a coordinated network.
Well, you got to.
They got influence that stretches from neighborhoods to jail cells and everywhere in between.
Damn right. Beautiful. Recent years, you're still seeing how quickly things can turn violent and how wide La Eme reaches. January 31st, year 2022, a fight breaks out at the United States Penitentiary in Beaumont, Texas, between members of the Mexican Mafia and MS-13. Ooh. They even did that to MS-13. Like, they acknowledge or they praise the Mexican Mafia.
Well, they're associated with them.
Right. This escalates fast. 2 people dead. Fallout serious enough that the federal system puts all United States prisons on lockdown.
Damn.
Ooh, they're worried that retaliation could spread to other facilities.
Jeez.
And not very long after that, another case starts building on the very outside. October 2022, LA Police Department, FBI, joint investigation into the West Side Wilma's gang. This is in LA Harbor area. This investigation runs for months, eventually leads to a major crackdown because on the 17th of May, 2023, authorities move in. They arrest 12 Mexican Mafia members. They seize a large amount of weapons and drugs. They recover 23 firearms, 57.7 pounds of meth.
Wow.
23,000 fentanyl pills.
Yeah, get that shit off.
Ooh, 5.2 pounds of powdered fentanyl.
Oh, my.
Ooh, that stuff deadly.
The powdered stuff's even more deadly.
Damn you. Fuck you guys in that fentanyl. 2.2 pounds of cocaine. Yeah.
That they're mixing the fentanyl with, though. Yeah. That's the fucked up thing.
The search warrants stretch across the South Bay and even reach as far as Bakersfield.
Bakersfield? No, the white people.
Oh, no. The rich kids.
Right.
Then another example of the same pattern used over and over and over and over again. Violence inside, coordinated operations on the outside. A network that connects both sides, no matter how much pressure gets put on it. Even as recently as 2025, you can still see the same pattern playing out.
January 21st, 2025. A coordinated operation led by the San Diego Police Department, along with other agencies. Well, they wrap up a 6-month investigation into Mexican Mafia activity. When that's all said and done, 39 people tied to La Eme are arrested. The charges are serious across the board. You got murder, attempted murder, arson, extortion, weapons trafficking, drug trafficking, and more. Just like in earlier cases, the investigation shows that a lot of this is still being directed from inside the prison, with leadership continuing to run things from behind bars. During the operation, authorities seized more than 36 firearms along with multiple pounds of meth, cocaine, and fentanyl. The bigger takeaway is how the system's still working. La Eme is controlling street gangs, forcing them to pay taxes on drug sales and other illegal activity. And it's not just gangs feeling that pressure. Business owners, they're getting pulled into it too. If they don't pay up, they're threatened with vandalism, arson, physical attacks, and even murder. It's the same model that's been in place for decades, just still running strong, adapting, but not really changing at its core. La Eme isn't just something that exists in prison or in headlines anymore. It's a real impact on Hispanic communities too, on the way law enforcement has to operate around it as well. Out on the streets, the Mexican Mafia keeps control through the Sureño gangs, and a big part of that is money. Drug dealers, they're expected to kick up a percentage, usually about 10%. In exchange for that, they get protection inside the prison and enforcement out on the streets. That system doesn't just stay within the gangs either. It spills over into the neighborhoods. It's where local drug dealers and even businesses, they can end up paying just to avoid being targeted. And if they don't, the threat of violence is always there. In places like the LA Hidta region, that kind of setup has helped La Eme build influence over thousands of inmates in county jails. And when those guys get out, they carry the structure right back into their communities. It creates a cycle where prison and street activity, they feed into each other instead of staying separate. Well, that kind of violence, that comes out of what is often internal, meaning it's happening within the same communities. Orders like green lights lead to targeted assaults or killings against rivals or even their own members who step out of line. In areas with heavy gang presence, that drives up homicide rates. A large portion of those killings involve firearms, clearly. Sureño gangs, they play a major role in that. They're active in a huge number of areas, and their involvement shows up in everything. You got retaliatory shootings, to drug turf battles, witness intimidation. In some regions, gangs tied to the system, they're connected to more than half of the overall crime. Inside Hispanic communities specifically, that creates a constant sense of pressure. People know what can happen if they speak up, so a lot of crimes, they go unreported, nobody saw anything. The whole no snitching mentality isn't just talk, it's enforced. And that makes it harder for law enforcement to get cooperation. At the same time, this isn't staying confined to big cities. As gang members move out from places like Los Angeles into areas like the Inland Empire and the Antelope Valley, that violence, it spreads with them. Smaller police departments, they can end up overwhelmed, especially when those areas weren't dealing with this level of activity before. Over time, it feeds into itself. Younger people in these communities, they get pulled in, either directly or indirectly. That keeps the cycle going just over and over again. It affects not just crime rates, but the overall stability of those neighborhoods, making it harder for things like economic growth or long-term development to take hold. On the other side of this, law enforcement, they have spent decades trying to figure out how to actually go after something this organized. Starting in the 90s, one of the biggest tools they've been using is the RICO Act. They finally caught up to the East Coast. Instead of going after individual crimes at one time, it lets them treat the Mexican Mafia as a full criminal enterprise. That means they can charge members for things like extortion, drug trafficking, and murder as part of a larger operation, whether those guys are even behind bars or out on the streets. To build those cases, it usually takes multiple agencies working together. You got the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the local popos, the sheriffs. They're all working together. They rely on wiretaps, informants, and undercover work to piece together how La Eme operates, especially things like the taxation system and how orders for violence even gets passed along. Inside the prison system, there's another layer to it. The California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, they work to identify confirmed members through what they call validation. Once someone is validated, they can be placed in security housing units, which is basically isolation where communication is heavily restricted. The idea here is to cut off their ability to keep running things from the inside. There have been cases like a 2020 operation at California State Prison, LA County, where authorities were able to break up drug distribution networks operating from within prison walls. Some of the early major cases come in late 90s. May of 97, 12 members are convicted on racketeering and conspiracy charges tied to murders and extortion. Then just a few months later, September 97, another 10 members are sentenced to life. Taking out those mid-level enforcers hits the organization where it matters. Because those guys, they're carrying out the day-to-day orders. And those cases don't stop there either. Later prosecutions, they keep building on that same approach. For example, in 2009, a member, he's sentenced to life after admitted to RICO violations that's tied to drug distribution and violence carried out under La Eme. Even with all that, it's a constant back and forth. Law enforcement, they adapt. So does La Eme, which is why the fight against them has stretched on for decades. As time goes on, those efforts, they don't slow down. They ramp up, especially when we start getting into the 2010s and into the 20s. They got a bigger focus on how La Eme connects prison operations to what's happening out on the streets. 2018, a federal indictment goes after members for racketeering tied to drug smuggling and extortion all inside the LA County Jail. That case leads to convictions that usually actually cut off some of the internal supply lines, at least for a little bit. Then, April 2022, another major move hits. This time, Orange County. 31 affiliates are charged under a 33-count RICO indictment for coordinated extortion and violence. And by January of 2025, prosecutors in the Eastern District of California, they bring more than just racketeering charges, this time tied directly to drug distribution being run through the Sureño networks. It's the same pattern, go after the structure, not just the individuals. And even more recently, just a few months ago, you see how active things still are. March of 2025, about a year ago, 4 gang members out of Pomona tied to the La Eme, they're convicted of racketeering-related murders. Then in June that same year, 19 people are charged in a conspiracy to murder a rapper, showing that orders are still being pushed out from inside prison. Later that year, October 7th, the FBI and LAPD carry out another large operation. This time they got 14 members of the Rancho San Pedro gang, all connected to La Eme on RICO charges. What stands out there is that one of the people directing activity is a Sicilian associate running things through smuggled cell phones from inside the prison. Uh-oh. The raids hit 17 different locations and turn up firearms and drugs. A lot of these cases, they show the same strategy from law enforcement. You go after the street gangs tied to La Eme to put pressure back on the leadership. But at the same time, they also show the challenge. Even with arrests and convictions, the organization structure, especially with leadership spread out inside the prison system, makes it tough to fully shut it down, especially since they're still clearly running things from inside the prison. At this point, though, even the people studying La Eme, they don't fully agree on just how much control they actually have. It says a lot about how complicated the whole thing is. On paper, the system looks tight. Most Hispanic street gangs in Southern California, they fall in line. They pay taxes on drug sales, carry out green light orders when they're told. That shows real influence coming straight from prison. But in reality, it's not always that clean. Control, it can shift depending on the area and even the specific gang. There are groups outside California that call themselves Serranos, but don't really even have strong ties back to La Eme. Even inside California, there have been times where certain gangs push back. The Maravilla gangs, they're one example. They resist control and force La Eme to respond with retaliation orders that didn't always get fully enforced. So instead of one solid, unified system, it's more like a network that mostly holds together, but you got some outliers. A lot of that traces back just to how things developed inside the prison system in the first place. Going all the way back to the 50s and 60s, overcrowding and the breakdown of older inmate codes left a gap in authority. Groups like the Mexican Mafia stepped into that gap and started acting like their own governing body. Inside prison, that actually reduced some types of violence between inmates, but it didn't eliminate it. Just shifted where the violence showed up, pushing more of it into the streets. As prisons got bigger, it made things easier for gangs to organize and communicate across facilities. Attempts to mix different racial groups in prison yards didn't really stick. That separation ended up strengthening groups like La Eme among Mexican-American inmates. Even when violence inside did drop in certain areas, it didn't mean the system was working. It often just meant the control had changed hands. Law enforcement has had some success using the RICO cases, like we said, which includes indictments as recently as January 2025 tied to drug taxation and murder. Those wins haven't shut down the organization. The way La Eme is structured, with leadership spread out and new members constantly coming in from the streets, it makes it hard to fully break, probably never will. There are also gaps in how the response has been handled. Some reports point out that not enough attention has been given to how Sureño influence has spread beyond California into places like Arizona and even Utah. At the same time, resources have sometimes been focused more on international gangs like the feared MS-13, leaving domestic prison to street networks less contained than they could be. On top of that, coordination between agencies hasn't always been consistent either. Information doesn't always get shared the way it should. That gives groups like the La Eme room to adapt and keep operating even after major crackdowns. So when you look at the bigger picture, it's not just a story of control or chaos. It's something in between. It's a network that's strong enough to maintain influence, but loose enough to survive pressure and keep rebuilding when it takes a hit. The Mexican Mafia really hits mainstream attention, and we'll see why in the 1992 movie American Me. The film is co-produced, directed, and starred in by Edward James Olmos. It's loosely based on the rise of La Eme, but the reaction to it isn't just criticism, it gets serious. Olmos reportedly receives death threats from people tied to the Mexican Mafia who feel the movie paints him in a negative light. Well, you're a fucking gang, what do you think's going to happen? Things get even more intense after the release. 2 consultants who worked on the film are murdered not long after it comes out, and to this day it's not even completely clear if those killings were directly connected to La Eme or tied to the issues like layoffs that already caused tension and threats. But the time in puts a little spotlight, makes you think, what's going on here? Part of the problem comes down to how certain things are portrayed in the movie. Shows the killing of Rodolfo Cadena, who was the real-life figure behind the main character Santana, as being carried out by his own people. That doesn't sit well with members of La Eme. There are also scenes like a homosexual rape involving the character Puppet, and the later killing of his own brother for disrespecting the gang. They're seen as crossing a line in how the organization is actually depicted. Because of those threats, Olmos even applies for a concealed handgun permit, but he's denied for some reason. It's California. The fallout doesn't stop there either. While serving his life sentence at Pelican Bay State Prison, Joe Pegleg Morgan, he files a $500,000 lawsuit against Olmos, Universal Studios, and others involved in the film. He's claiming that one of the main characters is based on him without permission. That goes nowhere. Not long after that, in 1993, another film comes out, Blood In, Blood Out. It's mostly fictional, but it clearly pulls inspiration from that same world. The main character, Miklo Velka, he's largely based on Pegleg, especially with the detail of being white and losing his leg after getting shot during a robbery, which is just one of the stories tied to Morgan. Even the gangs in the movie mirror real ones. La Onda represents the Mexican Mafia, the Black Guerrilla Army lines up with the Black Guerrilla family, and the Aryan Vanguard obviously reflects the Aryan Brotherhood. So by the early 90s, La Eme isn't just operating in prisons and on the streets no more, it's part of the cultural conversation too. But as those films show, bringing that world onto the screen comes with real-world consequences. And when you step back and look at all of it, the thing that stands out isn't just the violence, it's how consistent the system has been from the very beginning. What started in 57 as a small group of inmates trying to take control of their environment turns into something that stretches across prisons, neighborhoods, even state lines. The names change, faces change, law enforcement cracks down again and again, but structure keeps holding. Because at its core, La Eme isn't built around one leader or one moment. It's built on rules, loyalty, and a system that keeps feeding itself from prison to the streets, right back again. And that's why decades later, still here, still thriving, and we're still talking about them. That's the Mexican Mafia, La Eme. Yeah, still going today. Wow, crazy. not as big of a, obviously, cultural influence on America like the American Mafia, but the Mexican Mafia, they got their own little place in the old criminal underworld, as you see. So with that, we're going to end it right there, and we'll be back next week for Serial Killer. So stay tuned to see what that is. Remember, comment, review. If you're listening on podcast, if you're listening on YouTube, like, subscribe, share with your friends, and hit that notification bell so you know when we're going live to record these episodes. Like we said, we're about 3-4 weeks ahead. So if you want to stay in the loop with us, see what we got coming down the pipeline, coming down the pike or pipeline, hit that bell and notification so when you know when we go live or when we drop new videos. So with that being said, we'll see you next week for more Outlaws, Gunslingers. We're the Michiganders. Bang, bang.